He's got his hand in his waistband. And he's a black male.
A couple minutes after neighborhood watch officer George Zimmerman said that to Sanford, Florida police, his encounter with 17-year-old Trayvon Martin would leave Martin dead.
All right, what is your phone number?
Just gunshots.
We want justice!
Protests erupted nationwide after Zimmerman was not initially arrested. Zimmerman says Martin attacked him and he acted in self-defense under Florida's Stand Your Ground law. Zimmerman was eventually arrested, has now been charged, and there will be a trial. And this story has now ignited a conversation about race in America. But that's a conversation that's often vague and rarely personal. We want to change that.
I grew up on the east side of Cleveland, in the hood. I didn't have a, multiracial experience growing up.
We moved to the U.S., and for us it was, living the American dream, all possibilities, but it was the only place, in the first place in my life, that I experienced any discrimination.
At Fox 8, we wondered how we could ask others to talk about this sensitive subject unless we were willing to do so ourselves. So we are presenting a series of extraordinary and intimate interviews with some of our own people. Now, if you think you know where these interviews will go, you may be surprised.
If there's one thing that someone who's watching this could take away from our conversation, what would you want it to be?
Pull up your pants, first of all.
Interestingly enough, when I came here, for the first 5 or 6 months, I was getting hate mail from hate groups here in town, to the point where we had to call in the FBI.
We will explore many emotions, including fear. Wayne Dawson remembers hearing a race riot outside his Cleveland home as a child.
I just remember being so very scared as a child, afraid to, to go to sleep, thinking that a bullet was going to come flying through my window at home.
We'll also explore shock that can lead to anger. Jennifer Jordan remembers being singled out in a bar.
I just hear a voice saying, "You're not welcome here." And it just seemed like everything just went silent, and all eyes in the room looked at me.
We're not asking questions about people being teased, but rather taunted or even targeted just because of their race.
They would go like this. That was like the most common thing. And, to the point where I didn't want to go to school.
Now, if you think these interviews will be full of angry rants about race, again, we think you may be surprised.
I just say look for the humanity in people. And I think people are really surprised when they find out how much everybody has in common if that's what you look for.
It doesn't matter what color you are. It has nothing to do with anything. You can still achieve whatever you want to achieve. It's the way it is.
We invite you into the conversation. Race, Our Stories, on Fox 8 News.
And I remember the riots of 1968, lived in Glenville, and I remember how scared I was as a child. I mean, I understood why they were rioting because, racial injustice and all of that. Didn't agree with, what they were doing, however. And I just remember being so very scared as a child, afraid to, to go to sleep, thinking that a bullet was going to come flying through my window at home. I was so happy when daylight came the next day and everything was okay. Really, really turbulent times, no doubt about that.
Did your parents teach you and your brother growing up about racism?
We understood that as African Americans, we were considered, second-class citizens, sort of. We knew that there were certain things that we couldn't do, but they never really focused that conversation at me. I do remember this. My mother always told me, as a black person, I'm going to have to work that much harder. I'm going to have to give 110%. I do remember her saying that. And that's my advice to any African American. Even today, we have to give 110%. I mean, we're not playing on a level playing field, but we're in the ball game. We're in the ball game. There was a time when we weren't even in the ball game, but now we're in the ball game, and because of that, we just have to, just give that extra. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem because I know if I give that extra, everything's going to work out. I'm proof positive of that. I mean, I grew up on the east side of Cleveland, in the hood. I didn't have a, multiracial experience growing up. So I am an example of a fact of what can happen if you focus, put your mind to it, and don't get, sidetracked by different things that happen in life. You got to have that goal. You got to have that goal. You have to keep your eyes focused, keep your eyes on the prize, if you will.
If there's one thing that someone who's watching this could take away from our conversation, what would you want it to be?
Pull up your pants, first of all. But see, you got to understand how old I am too.
I'm gonna guess 35.
Right, 36. So I'm in a whole different generation. I'm a whole different generation from these kids today. I really, really am. See, talking to me is like them talking to their father, and I would tell them,
Do you almost
pull
think
your
it's
pants
worse
up.
today
Oh, probably.
than it was?
Than it was when I was a kid?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as what the styles and stuff, what we lack today. Here's my thing. I'm gonna tell you this right now. To me, the problem is not the isolated incident of a white person killing a black person or a hate crime or something like that. To me, that's not the problem. To me, the problem is black on black crime. That is the problem. The problem is lack of self-esteem within our community. Problem is lack of motivation within our community, lack of role models within our community. To me, that's the problem. It's not this one, it's not the George Zimmermans of the world. It's the individuals who are in the hood selling drugs and doing all those negative things that are poisoning our young people's minds. That's the problem to me. If I had, to me, that's why we should be upset, not over one incident that happened down in Florida. Yeah, they make you mad. Yeah, you're upset for a minute, but don't let that consume you. Is it right? Absolutely not. But don't let that consume or define you. Keep on moving. Keep on striving. That's the key.
Usually when people ask me where is home, I always say it's Georgia. My family, we moved to Georgia when I was 13 years old. My parents were trying to find the place to live the dream, to give their kids everything they could, and that meant education and a better life. So we moved to the U.S., and for us it was, living the American dream, all possibilities, but it was the only place, in the first place in my life, that I experienced any discrimination.
What's the first taste of discrimination you remember?
When we moved to the U.S., we didn't speak any English, and I was one of the first ones in my family to get a good grip at the language. So anytime we went anywhere, I would be the spokesperson. I would translate for my whole family. But once my parents started learning and they would try to communicate a message to anybody at a store, the people would be like, I don't know what you're saying, and they would say it again. And I knew that there was a difference in their accent, but it wasn't bad enough that they couldn't understand it. It was more like, we can't help you. And it happened over and over again that I remember getting upset and saying, excuse me, are you deaf? It's obviously clear what they're saying. And they realized that I spoke English well, and their reaction then changed.
Is there a conflict that the place that your family got opportunity is also where you experienced discrimination, or did you just figure this comes with the opportunity?
I think the amount of discrimination is not enough to kill a dream. We came here with high hopes, high dreams, and I have been able to accomplish a lot of things that my parents take a lot of pride in. And we knew that in life you have to give up some things for others. And that meant maybe a little bit of discrimination here and there, but when you go home, you have a great life, you're happy, you can feed your family.
And the discrimination didn't hold you or your family back from being successful, correct?
If anything, is more of an inspiration, I think, especially for myself, experiencing discrimination on my first job when they said, you have an accent, we can't put you here or put you there. And it made me work harder to show them that I could do the job better than anyone else.
You and I first sat down on an anchor desk a little more than a year ago, and you said the reaction from some people watching in Cleveland was pretty powerful and pretty negative, right?
Oh yes, the reaction when they came to Cleveland was so negative that I was extremely shocked.
More so than you'd experienced elsewhere?
More so than when I was younger. I think it was my accent or where I came from that I was different. I heard a lot, you're Hispanic, this is not Univision, or this is not another network that speaks Spanish. And some people said that I don't speak English.
You got insulting emails?
I got insulted in emails through voicemails left on my work phone. I also encountered a couple of colleagues from the area that asked why I wouldn't go to a city like Miami, or how long should I plan to be here because obviously I don't fit in.
Colleagues in our business?
Yes.
Not at our station, I hope.
Not in our station.
Facebook.
Oh, Facebook. There were actually, there were groups, let's get Angelica out of Ohio. I saw that and I go, really, why? You have to take everything as a grain of salt and just see the best in the experience. And for my experience here is that, yes, some people were negative, but there were also other people that were willing to defend me and speak for me and make me feel welcome.
Strangers willing to do that?
Absolutely. People I'd never met in my life.
The experience of being discriminated against. When you're now in a room with people who may be different, in whatever way they may be different in that room, do you feel more inclusive towards those people? Do you reach out more to them?
Yes, especially if I see somebody that's maybe left out, I make sure that everybody is included. And even when I do community service where I work with other kids, I always make sure that they also are part of a different race, just so that they know that you don't have to be from the same race to care about somebody else.
You're a big sister. I was a big brother years ago. You're a big sister and big brother's big sisters. Yes. What race is your little?
My little is African American. And actually, you know, when I first met her mom, she said, well, you come from a different world. You're completely different. And I understand, you know, what she means. But I said, you know, I came from a hard-working family. And we could say that we were considered poor when I was growing up. But you know, I'm successful, and that's what I want for my little to have as well.
If somebody asked you about discrimination, opportunity, America, and how they mix, you would say what?
I would say that there would be a few bumps in the road, but America, and even though people say there's no dream anymore, this is not the land of dreams, I still believe that you can live your dream. You can't let other people bring you down.
And discrimination, opportunity, and Cleveland, you would say what?
Cleveland, it's a great place of opportunity. There will be some discrimination when you're new to the city. I think this is a city that is just kind of like when somebody comes into your house and they don't say hello. You're expecting them to say hello. I think it takes a little bit to get that warm welcome, and then eventually they love you.
Peekskill, New York, probably the most diverse city in Westchester County. I grew up having black friends, white friends, Asian friends, Hispanic friends, Middle Eastern friends. I mean, it was a melting pot of different cultures.
You went to Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, North Carolina. Correct. World apart from Peekskill, New York. Tell me about that.
That's when I realized that there were, you know, the black side of town, the white side of town, and there pretty much was not a lot of intermingling or interaction between the races. And I thought that was kind of, you know, Johnson C. Smith is a historically black college, so I expected that. But as far as outside in the city and going into restaurants, it was pretty much, you know, there were black restaurants, the black movie theaters, the black shopping malls. They all knew that, you know, oh no, we don't go to that mall, or we don't go to that movie theater because, you know, we would not be welcome there.
So despite all of that happened in college in North Carolina, you decided to go to work again in the South, in the state of Kentucky. Why Kentucky, and what were some of the things you learned or experienced there?
I would send my tape out everywhere in the country, and my first job just happened to be at an ABC affiliate in Bowling Green, Kentucky. You know, there are 200 markets in this country, and that was market 196. So right. That just goes to show you how small it was. Right. So I was just trying to get my professional experience, and, you know, I was willing to do whatever it took to get my first on-air job. It was one day in particular, a lot of my colleagues and I decided that we would go to a bar after work. So I walk into the bar, and I'm looking around for somebody that I recognize. I didn't see anybody, so I kept walking deeper into this. You know, it was a restaurant in the front, and the bar was in the back. And so by the time I got to the back where the bar was, you know, there were a bunch of people sitting in there, and I just hear a voice saying, "You're not welcome here." And it just seemed like everything just went silent, and all eyes in the room looked at me. And I was like, you know, did I just hear what I thought I heard? And I get out in the parking lot, and I see my producer, and I just broke down and started crying. And he was like, you know, what happened? And I told him what happened. And he immediately wanted me to go back in and show me which one said that. And I didn't know who said it because it was just a voice in a packed bar. And, you know, from that point on, I knew that I couldn't just walk into any establishment that I wanted at that time because I didn't know who was there, what their motives were, and I know that they were looking at color before anything else. That was definitely, you know, heartbreaking, and it still is today. I get emotional just talking about that story today.
You are more optimistic than pessimistic about the future based upon your experiences and what you've seen.
This country has come a long way. I mean, we have an African-American president, for God's sake. So we definitely have come a long way.
You know, growing up, I wanted to look like everybody else, and I couldn't understand why I didn't look like everybody else. And I was made fun of in grade school. You know, I mean, the kids would call me they would say things in what they thought were, you know, Chinese words, you know, or they would go like this. That was like the most common thing.
Did you cry?
Oh yeah, I mean, I would cry. I remember there was a period in 6th grade, from 6th to 8th grade, where I would repeatedly be sick, and my mom was convinced I had mono, but it was just kids making fun of me.
How did you handle the pain of that at the time?
Well, I like to make jokes. So, you know, I think a lot of times I would kind of make light of the situation, you know, and laugh with people and kind of mask it, if you will, by just being upfront about it. You know, sometimes I make fun of myself.
There was a lot of pain that was being hidden by joking and masking and playing along with people who were mean.
I think a big part of it was that I just always wanted to belong. That's really what it was.
How do you deal with people now, or you're pretty direct
Yes.
and in a polite way, but instruct people now about this?
I remember vividly I was at a parade in Bel Air, Ohio. I was at my last station, and I was in a parade, and people would actually yell things out at me, whether it was just a simple like Trisha Takanawa or, you know, or some remark about my race. And, you know, I just was like, really? You know, and so I didn't really pay it much mind because I was kind of considering the source in which it came from.
And what's underneath the obvious physical difference?
I think the unusual and the different is a lot of times the most amazing stories, the most amazing people. So that has definitely turned. Whereas before I just wanted to look like everyone else.
All right, let's talk about the challenges that you had, even growing up.
I grew up on a military base, as you know, and and we were overseas in different countries. And growing up on a military base, all Americans are forced to live right next to each other. You play with each other, you go to church with each other. So I grew up in a very diverse environment, and race really was not an issue.
Because you were together.
Because we were all together. And when Americans are in a foreign country, they tend to really bond to each other. When my father retired from the military and we moved to Texas, which is in the South, then my brother and I became keenly aware of separation, segregation, that we didn't see all the unity that we grew up with, so it was very strange for us. So there was a definite knowledge that we walked around with. You know, you carry yourself very well. You know, probably have to dress better than everybody else just to get equal treatment. When you're in a store, always stay by your parents so people won't assume you're stealing. Things of this nature show that rules and protocol and different standards that we were made keenly aware of as we grew up. When you grow up with that and it becomes reflex, you really understand and you can try to learn how to avoid certain situations too. You can see things coming a mile away.
At one time, did you ever feel like this isn't fair?
You get used to the feeling, which is kind of sad to say. You get used to the feeling and then you make a choice. Either I'm going to let this dominate me and go around every day with a chip on my shoulder, or I'm just going to push it away and not let it own me. I had friends who lived in great areas and great neighborhoods, and and I was involved in extracurricular activities. So when it was someone's turn to drive, one person would drive and I'd drop you off at your house, and da-da-da. And in some of the neighborhoods where I would drop my friends off, a police officer would pull me over. Well, what are you doing here? I'm like, dropping a friend off. Is interestingly enough, when I came here, for the first 5 or 6 months, I was getting hate mail from hate groups here in town, to the point where we had to call in the FBI and the Postmaster General because they were sending the letters. Unfortunately, that's happened in every market I worked in. And I came here in '99 and 2000, so it happened as early as that. When I go to certain stores, still to this day and age, as soon as I get in, I can notice the plainclothes security people following me around, just assuming, well, he's African American, he's going to steal something. And how I deal with that, as soon as I'll go to a store like that, I will go up to a salesperson and ask them for help.
What's your take home for people who are watching this? That your message, how to educate, how to get the word out?
I just say look for the humanity in people. And I think people are really surprised when they find out how much everybody has in common if that's what you look for.